The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us. There is so much to cover tonight. I don't know how I'm going to get it done in an hour, but we're going to try anyway. This is the Wrestling is Real podcast. Thanks for listening to me. King of Podcasts here with you. Let me just quickly run down what I have for you on the program tonight. Breaking news today, Ring of Honor taking a hiatus at the end of 2021, immediately after Final Battle, the pay-per-view coming up December 11th. And if they're coming back, it would be in April. But I think there's a lot of things that are going behind the scenes that I don't know what's going to happen. If it's going to stay around, or if what's going to be the plan. Because right now, it doesn't look good. I don't know what to think here about where they're going to go with that. The other thing I want to talk about also is what was originally going to plan on talking about was the new schedule for the pay-per-views for WWE, because they're putting a lot more stadium shows. As we had talked about before, we had mentioned if they're going to do more stadium shows, that's going to put more of the onus on them to improve their product and to be able to go ahead and pull off those kind of shows, because they're putting a lot more pressure on themselves to fill those seats. And putting the same kind of pay-per-views they've done that are not WrestleMania or SummerSlam, that's going to be tough for them. So with that said, we got that going on. Plus, AEW and Impact Wrestling have finished their partnership. What does that mean? And where do things come from here? That's something that's really interesting now that it has done, that is finished as of Bound for Glory. And where do things go from there? What are the plans for the company? And, you know, kind of evaluate where things went with AEW and Impact Wrestling. And was there any real benefit for either side is the real question. So we'll take it all right there. Let's go ahead and get right into it. So the first thing I got to bring up is the nuts and bolts of the announcement from Ring of Honor Wrestling. Sinclair Broadcast Group owns them, and this is what we have in terms of the announcement that was made. If you haven't heard it yet, you're going to hear it now from me. This was one on Twitter earlier this afternoon, and it reads, quote, "Throughout the pandemic, our top priority was to keep everyone healthy and safe, and despite not producing any live events over 18 months, we were able to keep everyone fully contracted. We now find ourselves at a time where we need to make changes to our business operations and are planning a pivot for Ring of Honor with a new mission and strategy. This year, the year will culminate with a Final Battle in December. We will be taking the first quarter of the 2022 to work internally to reimagine ROH. ROH has the most dedicated fans in the industry, and we appreciate their loyalty and patience as we reconceptualize Ring of Honor. We anticipate returning to live events in April for the Supercard of Honor with a new fan-focused product and provide a unique wrestling experience for wrestling fans." Well, this is where I have a problem with it, because after that, we get the word from Dave Meltzer, the Wrestling Observer newsletter, and I'm going to take the story from Forbes.com and Alfred Kanua that reports that all the talent has been released with their contracts. So we're going to reimagine the product. That's the blanket explanation to try to put, and I think this is something where remember, Sinclair Broadcast Group, it is traded on the NASDAQ. It is a publicly traded company, much like WWE is. So without giving any importance as to what they're going to do with their product, when it comes to this property and all the things that are going on with Sinclair Broadcast Group and what they're doing, we need to break down why this is happening, and where I think that the announcement doesn't have any weight to it, in my opinion, because I think there's something more to this. I talked about it on TikTok today, and I think really that what might happen more is, sure, Ring of Honor as an organization might be doing something to create a more fan-favored product and to return in April. But my thing is that I think something will happen before then that I feel like Ring of Honor might not be in the hands of Sinclair Broadcast Group upcoming. Maybe something's going to happen. I don't know. But I have to feel like with this company, they might be looking to find a seller or a suitor to unload the property. And what you have to know is everything's been going on with that. But let me go along and move along into some context. The releases. Here is what we know. Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer newsletter reported that Ring of Honor has released everyone from their contracts. Everyone. Now, they're calling this a brief hiatus. PW Insider was reported about the decision was made about 1 week ago. Ring of Honor, of course, media is a subsidiary of Sinclair Broadcast Group, but from the looks of it, Ring of Honor's current situation was not one that was able to be bailed out by its deep-pocketed parent company. And so there's a lot there that needs to be considered. And there have been stars that have already talked about taking additional dates now, taking bookings as we speak. And we're seeing that part happening as well. And it's really, it's a sad day to me to think of what would be the upcoming, what becomes of Ring of Honor after this. I can't say too much with the fact that I've talked about this for a while, but I really didn't feel like there was much to be said. Like, I just felt like since the pandemic, we haven't said too much. There hasn't been much to say, as a matter of fact. To me, I just feel like it's just been, we've kind of had not much action going on for Ring of Honor, except for a couple different stories, knowing that Mike Bennett and Maria Kanellis Bennett had made it back to the company. The issue with Marty Scurll and the real issues he had with him coming out of all the issues with, with all the bad negativity that he brings across, and that he has not worked since. And this is really, it's an odd situation. 4:00 this afternoon, Eastern, Brian Alvarez also put that Ring of Honor would do tapings in November and then run Final Battle. Nobody's contract will be renewed, but everyone under contract will finish out the year. They're, however, able to work anywhere they want immediately. And there were, if any rumors of Sinclair canceling the show are not true. So, even though the promotion, this is according to Bleacher Report, the promotion is looking to relaunch in the spring, Wednesday's announcement is bound to raise questions about Ring of Honor's overall viability moving forward. Ring of Honor was once the top proving ground for rising stars in the independent scene, especially after the Monday Night Wars, when you saw ECW fold and be bought. When WCW was folded and was bought. Ring of Honor and TNA around the same time both came up and emerged. And so did MLW to some respect as well. They all came up to try to go and fill the void. And a lot of those stars went over. And Ring of Honor was one place to find some great stars. As you know, Bryan Danielson, CM Punk, Samoa Joe, Adam Cole, and Seth Rollins are among notable examples of Ring of Honor all-stars that are there. And we know there's many others working in NXT, in WWE, and some now in AEW and Impact Wrestling. So Ring of Honor stars have moved across, and there's quite a bit of talent. I mean, it's not, the roster has been depleted for years. If it wasn't first for what happened in NXT and what WWE wanted to do to go ahead and build up the roster to go after and just pillage in other people's roster, like they did for TNA. After the TNA originals were pillaged, then they went after Ring of Honor because they decided to go after some other seasoned veterans at the time that Triple H was, at the helm of the NXT division, looking for veterans as opposed to trying to develop talent that was striking out when they were brought up to the main roster. And that's really what it comes down to. Now, the growth of NXT helped put a dent in Ring of Honor's popularity, but provided an alternative to WWE's typical presentation within the WWE ecosystem. The explosion of All Elite Wrestling dealt another blow to Ring of Honor, and that's really because besides what was going on in New Japan, the culmination of Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, Adam Cole, the Super Elite, the Super Click, and the Bullet Club Elite was spawned in Ring of Honor, and that's all because of that New Japan relationship that they had at the time. So Ring of Honor had to brace for a wave of marquee wrestlers heading for the exit door. And also because Ring of Honor, Sinclair was only going to spend as much money as they wanted to do, but they were never going to put the kind of money out there to compete with WWE, nor were they ever going to try to do anything to go after All Elite Wrestling. There might have been a time they could have done that, but we know that in 2018 we had the Ring of Honor G1 Supercard with New Japan Pro Wrestling. And then later in August, we had the all-out pay-per-view. And like I said, we were going to get a rumbling. A change of wrestling was coming. It was imminent. And it has now happened. And now we're at the point where Ring of Honor has been dealt so many blows. Sinclair was not willing to go and buy contracts and take some of the stars that were being released by WWE this year, nor some of the stars that All Elite Wrestling acquired as a result of what was going on before. Because there were always certain stars that from the independent circuit that could have been brought in, or others. But we know that Joe Koff and the team at Sinclair never chose to do that. That was not anything they were going to plan to do. They had a limited budget, and they were to stick to that budget. What they were given more than anything else that Ring of Honor was provided was the broadcast time and being able to go and continue to operate, but on a low budget. It was probably meager at best, but they were never going to get that budget that they really needed to compete or to really do something out there. But the idea of a live wrestling product to be put on television on their local affiliates, and eventually with what they were doing. But the problem is that Ring of Honor and as a property and Sinclair Broadcast Group, when they took over Ring of Honor, Sinclair Broadcast Group has really changed in the time that they took this company over. I mean, it's changed so much. And so when you look at what's going on, it was 2011 that they took over. But so much has changed with Sinclair Broadcast Group since then. So let's just go into what has happened since 2011 and what they have done. Now, they started acquiring other TV stations. First of all, it was the assets of 4 Points Media Group, and they also took the stations of the Next Star Broadcasting Group through brokerage agreements. They were just gobbling up stations. Then they started buying from Freedom Communications, and they were spending hundreds of millions of dollars for all these stations to come on board. So it was deregulation. The change of what was going on about what media companies could do to acquire properties. That's what was going on here. So they've acquired television stations, and they started acquiring networks. And they also started getting the affiliations for said networks as well. They've been building a juggernaut of TV stations, very viable with local programming. They've been creating local programming for it to support said programming, and they're working on other projects. So if you look at the Wikipedia for Sinclair Broadcast Group, there's so much more that's going to be said. Then they started their streaming, and then the other thing they did in 2014, which you started really seeing some things ramp up, was they created their own sports network within their own company, distributing college sports broadcasts. So at the time, they were really trying to build their sports properties. Wrestling was part of it. So they did college sports, and they started doing more with it. And then they moved along and then created the channel Stadium, which has now been the standalone for all their projects when it comes to American Sports Network, what they had at the time. I know about this because Sinclair Broadcast Group and the American Sports Network, which is now what Stadium is, which you can find on Pluto TV and on their website and on Facebook, they have been able to get some broadcast deals to do college football, and they've been able to do other sports and be able to go and make some go at it, getting live sports and monetizing it, only to a certain amount. But in West Palm Beach, where I live, those studios were housed here. And I even tried to go and get a job over there at one point because they were hiring. So then they started doing more, creating channels. So they created their own channels. For instance, or they bought networks. So, for instance, they started creating their own networks, and then you started seeing where Ring of Honor, which kind of just put in a spot where they were just trying to put them in a place to be watched. So Comet was a channel that was launched as a sci-fi broadcast sub-channel network. What was happening was Sinclair was creating channels for the HD channels, the HD2, HD3s of their local stations to create other content and to get it also eventually onto cable networks and take spots there. And all he did was just rehash older programming or some of their local programming they made on the cheap and put it out there. Then they created another TV network in 2017, Charge, and I think Ring of Honor might have been on both of those channels at some point, but at the same time, they never had cable clearance on a national network, on a really national clearance that had 90-95% of the country. Unlike what I mean, Impact Wrestling for a while when Anthem bought them, they put them on Pursuit, and it didn't have the full clearance, and it was a lot on premium sports packages. Nobody would go to a hunting channel to go look for Impact Wrestling, but that was the place to put it to keep it going until they put them on Access, and Access became a better channel. That Ring of Honor, you might remember, actually was on for a short time, and then it went to Destination America, and then Sinclair put them where they were today, which is, I believe they were running or still are running on Bally Sports, but on at different time slots. Not some really good, appealing time slots to watch the show. Like, there's not like what you have AEW with Hatch Dynamite on TNT, or Raw or SmackDown on USA and Fox, respectively, or MLW on Vice TV or beIN Sports, as they have, respectively. They haven't had that either. Sinclair Broadcast Group, the owners of Ring of Honor, have been aggressively moving. Then they bought the Tennis Media Company, which includes the Tennis Channel, Tennis.com, Tennis Magazine, and they decided to integrate all the properties. Then they bought Tribune Media, which owns WGN America, Food Network, ownership of Food Network, and then they started doing more to acquire. They've been buying. They've had the money. They've had the pockets. But for them, they're kind of like what, in some spaces, they would almost be like a private equity kind of feel, where they're taking a company that is in Ring of Honor when they did in 2011. That was not something that was absolutely a juggernaut. Like, it was not a big money maker, but the potential of being able to go and make it a really worthwhile, viable, equitable property was what they were trying to do. And that's what they were going to go for. Now, they tried to go through Tribune Media, but then there was an issue where it couldn't be done. SSC nixed on it. They tried to go after that. So, again, they have money in their pockets, but are they going to give it to Ring of Honor to build a better product? Because we all know wrestling promotions need capital to thrive. Right now, the two biggest wrestling companies are at the helms of billionaires running and operating the product and being able to go and make what they're happening right now with the rosters, with the TV deals, and what they're able to do. And to a certain point, Impact Wrestling is backed by a pretty good size company that is continuing to grow as well. And then some of the others, they're kind of working off of shoestring budgets. I mean, Billy Corgan has a lot of money, but he's also putting a lot of his own onus into creating NWA and building that up as he is. Same thing goes for MLW and Court Bauer. There's a lot there on how he can be able to go and put that all together. So then Sinclair would get into the deal of regional sports. The regional sports network, like the Yes Network or Sunshine Network or Fox Sports, all the Fox Sports cable channels that run Fox Regional Sports. So whenever your local NBA, NHL, NFL, or college football teams would all be carried on these channels. There's a whole lot of rights fees, a whole lot of exposure there. There's a lot of money in those stations. And I remember, what was it? Byron Allen Entertainment Studios tried to go and buy those stations off and could not do it. Sinclair bought them in $10 billion. And then they went ahead and created a deal with Bally's to go ahead and create the Bally Sports Networks. They're a family of networks, all former Fox Sports stations, and they're doing a whole lot of work right now. The other thing, too, is that they've gone through a lot of issues when it comes to a ransomware attack that was affecting a lot of their stations in the last week. And there's a whole lot there that was a lot of issues. The ransomware attack, apparently, there's a whole lot being said. We could talk about that. And then also, Sinclair, if you didn't know, it's a Fortune 500 company. As of 2020, revenues of $5.9 billion. It's one of the place to get 465 of the top 500 companies in the country. Over 10,000 employees as of 2021. Plus, they bought a brand new building, acquired a 46,000 square foot building for their headquarters to accommodate their employees. Like, there's money upon money upon money. So you would think there would be no reason for Ring of Honor to be having issues, but the pandemic happened. Everybody took a hit financially as a result of this. And as they said, to the credit of Ring of Honor, for 18 months during this pandemic, when they couldn't run shows live, they continued to provide programming that they had to do to make good for their broadcast partners, for all these affiliates. Because some of those affiliates did run on their local channels. They would run it on Saturday nights, Friday nights, whatever, but they would run it in prime time as local access for these channels. Was it going to get watched a lot? Probably not. And sometimes those shows by Ring of Honor would get bumped off for something else. But, I mean, look, I have, CBS 12 is my local affiliate that runs Ring of Honor. I have never stopped at that channel on Saturday nights at 8 o'clock to watch Ring of Honor. And I believe they still do run it on Saturday nights, but like, I'm not watching it. I don't ever think to go to that channel for much of anything, but it was there. And plus, I always felt like the TV program was bland and very they just needed to get it done. They're taping so far in advance to do an hour-long show and putting a couple of vignettes in there, but there's not much to it. It's pretty plain. It's very just vanilla programming. So if you want to watch the matches, sure. But there's not much more they're doing to the program. It's been like that for years. And also, the level of talent, I mean, it's not like the talent's bad, but we've seen the same talent there for a long time. And some of the talent they brought on board and they've been building up, I've not been really too much, again, King Vincent or Vincent Marseglia. I forget what they call him now, but I never got much in that character. Or there's others in there that just haven't done for me. I was really big a fan of Dalton Castle, but then they've changed that character so much, it's just not the same. And, there's a lot there. The other thing they've done as well, not only have they done all the work with those sports networks, of which they were going to be carrying, all those sports networks were going to be carrying Ring of Honor Wrestling at some point. I don't know if the time slot was ever done. I never really paid attention to it. It's just that with all the inconsistencies of Ring of Honor, to find a way to go and watch that show consistently and think and remember to go watch it or even bother to go and record it? No, not really. So for me, I've always just really paid attention to the pay-per-views because they were easy to access, easy to watch, and they had good matches. There would be a whole lot but behind those shows. So 4 times a year, I'd make sure to go ahead and watch Best of the World, the Anniversary Show, Final Battle, and Death Before Dishonor? Or Super Card of Honor, more than likely. That's what it was. So what they've also done is that they've also started to go into news, because for all these network affiliates and for this company to thrive, they can't just take regular scripted programming or take other shows that are out there and make money off of them, because there's only certain things that are actually going to go on now that really make people watch, and that is live sports and live news, believe it or not. So with that said, Sinclair also decided to launch a headline news service. They're putting a lot of money into news. They now have a show now called The National Desk that is run on all their stations. They have it 6 to 9 a.m. in the mornings, and also running a 10 o'clock nighttime broadcast now. Also, some of their stations are doing that as well. And for some of their stations that don't have local morning news shows, they have political shows they're doing that they run on Sunday mornings. There's a lot being done. Plus, they also have their own division of news that's reporting from Washington, D.C. to all of their affiliates for their newscasts. And, there's obviously another thing, too, that Sinclair has been getting a lot of issues when it comes to their political stance because of some of the programming that they provide and some of the shows they host. People like John Oliver and Last Week Tonight on HBO has definitely been not afraid to criticize Sinclair Broadcast Group and what they're doing. But what they're going on with right now, there's a lot. They have a lot of things that are going on now in terms of what their whole issues are. And they have their money into so many other things. It's amazing how much they own. They also have equity holdings in, not only does this company have, it's kind of like how Clear Channel iHeartMedia run, where this company, not only do they don't necessarily like to outsource for their resources, they like to buy resources and acquire them. So for instance, Sinclair Broadcast Group, and listen, I know this is a little bit in the weeds, so for those of you that have stuck around for me talking about this, I hope you find it interesting, but I'm really trying to get to a point here to absolutely make everyone realize what other wrestling podcasters will not say. The reason I think that Ring of Honor is susceptible to be sold or to be let go. And I believe that someone in the wrestling community, somebody that needs to invest or that wants to go ahead and that runs a promotion, that I think somebody else needs to come in and intervene to pick Ring of Honor Wrestling up and buy it off of Sinclair. And maybe that Ring of Honor is at such a destitute state without the roster, the value of that promotion drops. So really you're just buying the name. You're not even probably buying the broadcast rights. So what this company can do, Sinclair, they could just sell off the whole rights, properties, and library to a company at a certain price and just unload, which is what I think they're going to do. Ring of Honor as an organization is probably not speaking on behalf of Sinclair. They're probably talking about the fact that they hope to be back in April. My thing is, I don't think it's going to be with Sinclair. I think somebody else is going to own them at that point. We got 6 months, so there's probably a little bit of line. And my thought process is that I think they probably have somebody out there that's ready to go ahead and take them on. Now, there is nothing behind this. This is pure speculation. But I think Ring of Honor is going to get acquired. I think somebody else has to come in and take it. And Anthem Entertainment, I don't see why. There could be a possibility where they could see a good possibility in acquiring all of this. Like, think about the fact of Ring of Honor content, Honor Club, integrating it into Impact Plus and just taking it over. Why not? That Ring of Honor library is going to be a great property. And then Ring of Honor itself, I don't know how you would use the concept of it or just what to do with it, but you could do something with that there. I don't think Court Bauer could do anything with something like that, or Billy Corgan could have the kind of money like that. Or if there's anybody else within the wrestling circles that might be able to go in a round of investors and say, hey, we want to buy Ring of Honor off of you. And they find a way to do it. I'd like to see if that story actually comes to fruition. Because I think for the best of Ring of Honor Wrestling, I don't want them to be owned by Sinclair anymore. This company, even though they did right by, just as a corporation, not letting anybody lose their jobs, but what they did right now is pretty sad. It's disappointing at the least, because all these stars didn't need to be let go like this and not get a chance to ramp away and say, okay, severance. All right, so they're going to get a chance to go and work up until December 18th, and they're cut off. Like, I guess they're getting paid to the end of the year, but really, you get 2 months. Christmas present. Hey, happy holidays, guys. Happy holidays, Jay Lethal. Happy holidays, Briscoe Brothers. Happy holidays, Angelina Love. Happy holidays, Dalton Castle. Happy holidays, Matt Taven. Think about what they're doing here. I think this is detrimental to the industry. And I think that there's an opportunity financially for somebody to come on board and just acquire it. You might not like to hear this. I'm sure some of you won't like to hear this, but even Vince McMahon himself could say, hey, I have all these former stars in here, and they're all stars within my brand because I brought them and acquired them, and I paid them as well. If I have their libraries and I can use it and I can monetize it, put it up on Peacock, I could create DVDs out of it. I can create documentaries, whatever. There's a value to it. Just like WCW was sold, for $3 million compared to what the valuation was before. Ring of Honor can't be worth more to Sinclair. I mean, if they wanted to, I don't think it will be up to $1 million right now, especially after they just dropped it, because I don't think the broadcast rights are going to be part of the deal. I don't think so anyway. But we can always see what happens here and see if there's something that will happen with them as a result. So Sinclair Broadcast Group owns. They actually they formed a TV production company with Michael Eisner's Tornante company with MGM. With a partnership with MGM, they launched a comment channel. They own a company that does broadcasting equipment installment and repairs, designing and manufacturing, a private equity firm. Says everything here. They own a private mezzanine venture capital fund, a small businesses structured debt and mezzanine financing company. Then they also own a subsidiary, which does commercial signs, regional security funding, alarm operations, bulk acquisition, planned resort communities. So like, resorts, hotels and stuff, vacation getaways. And they also have a property investment company. And they also own a news service. That's a lot. And they're also affiliated with a number of companies as well. It's amazing. The one thing was that Sinclair did back in 2011 was that they threw a lifeline to Ring of Honor to survive. And for their credit, it's lasted 10 more years. We weren't sure if Ring of Honor was going to survive past 2011, but it did. And so, to the credit, Ring of Honor was able to go ahead and stay alive for 10 years. And for a number of those years, he actually did pretty well. And they really couldn't do much when it came to initially WWE, what they were doing 2015, 2016 to help really load up the cupboard at NXT, which is what they did. They took away Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, Roderick Strong, Bobby Fish. I mean, they really did do some work. Daniel Bryan, of course, or Bryan Danielson. They just took so many stars away. And, the other thing, too, is that then you got to think about Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens. God, I mean, there's a lot of stars you could think about that were at Ring of Honor and came over. And then AEW in the same way. 2017, 2018 were just such banner years for that company. Aside from the real, the golden years of when CM Punk or Tyler Black or Samoa Joe or Bryan Danielson were really in the charge along with Nigel McGuinness. I mean, there was a lot going on there. And they were and that was a time I didn't get to watch. But people really did herald Ring of Honor at the time, even though you couldn't really find it on television. It was hard to find their shows, and their production value was really rough. Now, what did happen with Ring of Honor is that they did get better in their production value, which was always an issue that everybody had with their shows, especially the early days. And when they moved over to Sinclair, it did get better. They did put money to increase the production value, increase the look in the venues. I think some of the times what they did was when they were booking venues, I think sometimes they picked too big a venue, and they were just doing things where they're trying to go and kind of go bigger than what they could, and that was one of the problems that they had. But when you look at the roster that they have and who they're leaving behind and what they're going to have now, it's sad. It's sad to go and see that this company's going to go and let all this fall apart, and that, what happens next. And you look at the roster they have right now as of 2021. So there's quite a few people we can bring up. First of all, you have the world champion Bandito, Beer City Bruiser, Brian Malonis, Brody King, who I think now being released. This is the other problem. They're all released. So who could go where? The other thing now is that everybody in the IWC can now speculate as to where all these stars are going to go. But I think there's stars you got to keep an eye on that are absolutely going to get looked at by others. Okay? You have Dalton Castle. Dak Draper has been a name that's been rising in the ranks now. You got Danhausen, who I'm just not into. I get it. I mean, some people just very indie-rific for me. You got Doug Williams on the roster, Dragon Lee, who's World TV Champion and also one half of the World Tag Team Champions, along with Kenny King. Then you have EC3, Eli Isom, Flamita, Flip Gordon, Homicide, the Briscoes, Jay Lethal. Like that's the Briscoes, Jay Lethal, Dragon Lee, Bandito, Roosh. Well, Roosh is injured for a significant amount of time, so we're not going to see him. But there's just a lot of names here that could go a lot of places. If Impact Wrestling is able to go ahead and pick up some of the slack, or AEW is going to, I don't even think AEW could possibly do that right now. But there are some names here. I mean, if MWA can open up a little bit, or MLW, there are some really good stars out of this group. If Court Bauer, who's had a relationship with Ring of Honor before, and did make some good words to Joe Koff and the team there at Ring of Honor, working with them in the past, MLW could take the spot. If there's anybody right now that has the possibility of really taking that talent and working what they're doing right now, MLW is it. If they can take and get these stars onto per appearance deals, which is what AEW does for some of their talent as well. No exclusive contracts, but get them on television, because all these stars right here, more importantly, need to be on TV. And some of them should absolutely be signed and should be full-time on somebody's roster. To me, Jay Lethal is still absolutely one of the best the Ring of Honor has ever had. I mean, he's held multiple titles, TV champion and world champion, and he's been great. Flip Gordon it's been very good. The Briscoes, you can't see them in WWE, but we could see them somewhere else. And I know they've burned some bridges. I mean, hell, NWA also, they burned bridges because of the Crockett Cup. But I think somebody could pick them up. I mean, I could see where Court Bauer could absolutely pick up the Briscoes. Why not? Kind of replacing what they had with Mance Warner, right? The Southern Psychopath. Kind of fits that role, takes him out of there. Then you're looking at Jonathan Gresham, who's producer backstage, also the head coach of the Ring of Honor Dojo. You got a lot of people that got some background. Kenny King has worked in a lot of different places. He could always go somewhere. Mark Haskins, Matt Taven. I felt bad because Matt Taven was doing so good, getting up to the point where he had the world title going into the Supercard, the Ring of Honor G1 Supercard, and just, I don't know, they didn't stand behind him. PCO, who already is, his contract was already finishing up with Ring of Honor, so he was going to be a free agent eventually. PJ Black, or Justin Gabriel, as everybody might remember. Ray Horace, who has worked in different locations. Rhett Titus. You got Shane Taylor, who worked with, teamed up with Keith Lee before Keith Lee went to NXT and moved out. Silas Young has been more or less just a veteran and just has been working not as much. He's been more full part-time anyway. You got Tracy Williams, Vincent Marsiglia, or Vincent, Will Ferrara. And there's not much after that. And then also quite a few women that he also brought on board, because if I remember, they were doing a women's world title tournament. They were going to do the Women of Honor. And Angelina Rose was there, Jenny Rose, Mandy Leone, Maria Maniac, Max the Impaler, Miranda Alizé, Quinn McKay, who was doing backstage interviewing, but also does wrestling. You have Roxy, who's their world champion right now, Session Moth Martina, Sumi Sakai, Trish Adora, Vita Von Star. So they had quite a bit of roster to work off of. And all this talent goes. So for everybody to go in and kind of, critiquing WWE for what they did, for what Ring of Honor did, I think is even worse than what happened there. Plus, then you got Future of Honor stars. They're on the way up. On our talent, you have Maria Kanellis Bennett and Vicky Haskins. Honestly, one of my favorite ring announcers out there, and I hope he gets picked up somewhere, is Bobby Cruz. I like this guy as a ring announcer. He's great. I'll say this, and this is no shot. You know what? I would love for NWA to pick him up. If NWA or MLW picked up Bobby Cruz, that's a win. Pick him up. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if with Greg Hamilton going out after what happened to him, Bobby Cruz, I don't see why he couldn't come into WWE. I think he'd be great over there, but I think it's just, he's old school. It will not work. But I think Bobby Cruz is fantastic. And he's just got a signature delivery as an announcer. I like him a lot. Caprice Coleman, I think him and Ian Riccaboni had really warmed up. I mean, I really did enjoy the heydays to me was when we had all that great roster talent going on, and Kevin Kelly, along with Steve Corino, were doing it. And those guys were just fantastic together. I thought they called great shows on pay-per-view. Really great stuff. Super Kick Party. That was all Steve Corino. Super Kick! All of that was him. And there's a lot there. Plus, they got they've had some pretty good referees back there. I think Todd Sinclair, that guy should get picked up by somebody. Todd Sinclair's been the senior referee. He's been a standout. Like, the guy just fits what he's doing. He's really good at his job. That guy also needs to be picked up by somebody. Either NWA, MLW, somewhere. Somebody needs to pick him up. By the way, Paul Turner, Also, former Ring of Honor referee that moved over into AEW right away. Also excellent, but came from the Ring of Honor ranks as well. And so there's a lot there of what they're doing. Chris Harrow is also working behind the scenes there as a producer. There's just a whole lot there to work off of. And I really hope that a lot of these stars are going to find themselves somewhere. There's a lot of great talent going to the indies here as a result from this. With all the exposure they did have on television, if it was not from watching the weekly TV show, it's from the pay-per-views. And that's what they're going to have a standout for. I just spent 40 minutes talking about Ring of Honor. I'm sad to see this. And I really hope for the best for all these people involved, that they find their footing somewhere else, that they find solid ground in another organization that will pick them up. There's some really good stars in this lineup that should absolutely be acquired. And they might not get any full-time pickups, but what they just should absolutely do is be able to get per appearance and get on TV. Get back on TV wherever you got to do. Get back out there. NWA, you got a lot of stars right there you can go after right now. There's some really good names you could pick up. And that's nothing against who you have on your current roster right now. But Billy, you got some names there. Please make some calls to these people. Do it, because there's a couple of good names in there. Like I said, I know you're not going to pick up the Briscoes, but man, Jay Lethal, get him in there. If not, MLW, go pick him up. Court, we'll see. Let's see, Court Bauer. Please get on the phone with these guys. You have the relationship. Bring them on board. And if one of these companies is possibly able to go ahead and take Ring of Honor and get it back on board somehow, we're not going to get the same Ring of Honor, but let's somehow, if the Ring of Honor brand can stay alive and somebody else in wrestling wants to come in here and take it off of Sinclair's hands, let's do it. Okay. We got other things to bring up. Let's talk about the announcement from WWE about everything that's going on with them for their streaming schedule. So they have announced their 2022 schedule for the most part of what they're going to be doing coming up. I'm going to take this from cordcutternews.com to get the whole story there because of what they offered here in terms of information. Now, the schedule does not include the shows coming up in Saudi Arabia for next year, which will be most likely in February and October. But we do know about Day 1 at State Farm Arena, Atlanta, January 1st. Royal Rumble at the Dome at America Center in St. Louis, January 29th. The former TWA Dome, that's been there for a long time. WrestleMania will be AT&T Stadium, will be a 2-night show, April 2nd and April 3rd. And by the way, the first 3 shows will be Saturdays. So Day 1 is a Saturday. Royal Rumble is on a Saturday. WrestleMania is Saturday and Sunday. And then the plan is to have some shows when football is not running, to run them on Sunday. So you got Sunday pay-per-views, May 8th, a scheduled pay-per-view at Dunkin' Donuts Arena in Providence, Rhode Island. And I forget what the May pay-per-view is. It's not Backlash, but it could very well be WrestleMania Backlash. I'm guessing that actually was not a bad name for a pay-per-view last year. And my guess is that would be the place to put it. 4 weeks after, or 5 weeks after or so, WrestleMania Backlash, May 8th. That's where I think things would go. June 5th, I don't think they have any plans. They'll probably just create a new name for the pay-per-view. All-State Arena in Chicago. July 2nd, big difference. Running the show much sooner. July 4th weekend, as a matter of fact. They're going to run Money in the Bank at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. So for Vegas, they're getting something to run July 4th weekend, 2022 in Vegas. It's like you're trying to draw people to Vegas. So for Nick Khan to set up the deal, you already got Allegiant Stadium. So yeah, let's bring them back on a holiday weekend. And that's what they did. So they said, all right, we'll put it right there. And then the same thing goes. Then we have Saturday, July 30th. SummerSlam will be held at Nissan Stadium in Nashville, the home of the Titans, NFL Titans, Tennessee Titans. Then Saturday, January 3rd or the 4th on Labor Day weekend next year, they will have a pay-per-view, which we are all figuring is going to be the one that will be held in either Cardiff, Wales, or London's Wembley Stadium. That was the one we were talking about before, where we could see the planned possible match of Drew McIntyre against the world heavyweight champion of boxing, Tyson Fury. So we could see that happen at some point. The Gypsy King could be back on WWE screens once again. And then November 26th, Survivor Series at TD Garden, Boston. I like the fact there's no December pay-per-view. To build up to day one, let's see what they do with it. But when you're looking at that schedule, we know there's two. So I'm not expecting both shows to have, in Saudi Arabia, I don't expect them to do both shows in stadiums, but I think one show could be a stadium show, one could be an arena show, like they did this time around for Crown Jewel. They ran it in an arena, but I could definitely see them doing a big stadium show for Saudi Arabia and then the arena show. I don't know if they'll do stadium shows twice. That's a lot to ask. Even though the way they set up Crown Jewel, maybe they will put them back in arenas. And they could go back to a big stadium, and they could go and put them into a big arena again. And that card they put out for Crown Jewel, that probably could have filled the seats in Saudi Arabia because, those people are probably not paying that much. And for COVID reasons, maybe they were not going to do so much. So anyway, a minimum of 4 stadium events. The schedule will set a new record for the most stadium events in the promotion's 6+ decades. Plus 2 more, like they said, February and October. 6 shows they want to run in stadiums. Like all these stadiums here. Legion, they got 45,000, but they could definitely book more. Like all these stadium shows, 60 to 80,000. And actually for AT&T Stadium, they want to get it. They probably want to get to 90 to 100,000. And that's a major calling for them to go and pull that off. So now, the other thing too is that you would actually have something where AEW's All Out, which is traditionally run on Labor Day weekend, you could have both shows running the same weekend. I mean, think about that. You could have a show that will be in the UK, will not be in America, but you could have a show that's running in the UK on Labor Day weekend and have All Out going on here in the States on the same weekend. That's crazy, but it could happen. As we know, the competition's been where it is, and for WWE, they're kind of just pushing their weight around and saying, you know what? We don't care about any stinking other competitions pay-per-view. If we want to run on a particular holiday weekend, we will. When traditionally Vince McMahon hasn't wanted to, for what everybody's talking about. But hey, maybe this year's a different story. Because there's something that's to be said about what the company as a whole, as a corporation, wants to do. But they're picking some pretty big locations, pretty big venues for pay-per-views. They need to build those shows up. I mean, think about it. Besides the normal WrestleMania season, which we always talk about, next year, after that, sure, they're going to probably have WrestleMania Backlash, which will lead into May. And then they'll have another show in June. So we might get a bit of a lull when it comes to what they got to do for that. But then that Money in the Bank, in June, after that pay-per-view, then you're going to have to really see a build-up for all the Money in the Bank qualifiers and what they're going to do to get those matches together, get that pay-per-view nice and hot, because they got to really build that up for Vegas. It's got to be good. Then SummerSlam. And SummerSlam getting 4 weeks. Like 2 shows in July. Big stadium shows. Then you got to get that UK show off the ground and really sell that up. And then you get the lull that you have because then you got the build-up Crown Jewel in October, most likely. Mid-October, and then you get probably like a 5-week ramp up to Survivor Series. And maybe day one becomes a regular thing for them. January 1st. It's really making a shakeup. By the way, fewer gimmick pay-per-views. And this is what my thinking is. And let me know if you think that, if you feel the same way. That I think that some of the concepts we had, not so much King of the Ring, not so much other matches we have, but as we know, some of the pay-per-views that we've normally had are not on the schedule. Like, let's just look at the pay-per-view schedule from 2019, before pandemic, and what they were doing as a normal setup schedule for pay-per-views. you may remember that in 2019, you had a Clash of Champions, Elimination Chamber, Extreme Rules, Fastlane. Well, Fastlane wasn't really much of a gimmick. And TLC. Now, those are... So, Clash of Champions, Elimination Chamber, Extreme Rules, Hell in a Cell, by the way, which is not scheduled to run next year. It has not said anything about that. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gimmick pay-per-views that they normally have. And we don't have that right now. So what happens next? I think those 5 shows become specialty events. Where I think in between what they're doing, I feel like we could see some shows on either Raw or SmackDown that are going to be themed shows that will be of this ilk. Much like how you see NXT with Halloween Havoc, they could very well say, okay, we're going to run these shows, but we're going to run them like an old WCW Clash Champions. We're going to run them on television. Maybe a little bit of commercials. I can see SmackDown using this and Fox using this as a way to go ahead and create interest in their shows. Imagine if SmackDown on Fox said, we're going to do a Clash of Champions night. And it's going to be a multi-branded thing. Or actually, we're going to do Clash of Champions, and it'll be all the SmackDown-related matches on that night and all the Raw-related events on that night. Elimination Chamber, you can see the Chamber holding up on 2 nights. Something like that. Or just 1. You never know. You could also use the Elimination Chamber or, Extreme Rules, which you already know Extreme Rules has matches. Do we need a whole pay-per-view Extreme Rules? We don't know. Hell in a Cell, we may not need that either. Because maybe Hell in a Cell and Elimination Chamber now just become matches that can be used for something important. If they want to do that. Use them as contender matches, whatever. TLC could just be a match again as opposed to a pay-per-view. But I could see where they could use this as special SmackDown events or special Raw events, much like they had, what they did with King of the Ring and the Queen's Crown tournament, where you had the event being held on both shows with the separate brands. You could do the same thing here where, next year they're going to do another Retro Monday Night Raw. They're going to do other events where they'll have other things that are going on to help build the interest. Themed shows. So the themed shows could be Clash of Champions. It could be Elimination Chamber. It could be Hell in a Cell. And it could be TLC. And who knows what else they might pull out of the hat that they could also do. There's a lot there they could work off of and say, you know what, we want to create these matches like that. They could go back into their whole setup of what they've done before. They haven't done Beat the Clocks. They could do that still. There's a lot of different gimmicks they could use, which they would probably want to use as they're trying to go and build up new stars again to get somewhere. And that's the whole idea of that. So they got a lot of work to do. But they could do very well with it. I don't know. Maybe it'll do really just fine. So let's go move along here. I haven't taken any time to talk about Becky Lynch and Charlotte and the whole deal there. But I do think that Charlotte's actions on Friday Night SmackDown with the belts and the title exchange, which was a horrible idea. It's just the difference between what WWE is doing and what AEW is doing. By the way, AEW Dynamite, fantastic. They had a lot of great segments tonight. MJF, what a classic heel. That guy's just, the feud they're going to set up with Darby Allin's been great. The Adam Page, Kenny Omega stuff has been great. The whole Halloween match they set up tonight with the 10-man was fantastic. Great match with Ethan Page and Sammy Guevara for the TNT title, and Sammy retains. Great stuff. And good stuff in their title tournaments. World Title Eliminator, Jon Moxley made quick work of Dark Order's 10, and Serena Deeb just stirring up a great feud with her and Hikaru Shida, and Hikaru Shida moves along into the TBS title tournament, which is really shaping up to be something really good. And also one of the better women's matches we've seen on TV in a while. Just saying that too. So a quick thing I want to bring up before I can wrap things up. Becky Lynch is getting the support after the confrontation with Charlotte. Right now, PW Insider is reporting there's no backstage heat with Lynch, seen merely defending herself against Flair, who derailed their in-ring title exchange to close the show. Should have never happened. It should have never happened. Fightful Select previously reported that Flair was asked to leave the arena before Lynch finished her dark match. PW Torch previously reported Flair disrespected Lynch and undermined Sasha Banks when she threw the Raw Women's title on the ground during an exchange with Lynch, which was not part of the script. So we could see something happen where, who knows, maybe there's a point that Charlotte Flair, we don't know what her contract issue is and where things are going with her coming up. That I don't know if we have any report as to when her contract expires. But there's been no word of that. I don't think there's anybody who knows anything or has reported anything to know as such. So there's that part to think about. Also know that Johnny Gargano, his contract is actually scheduled to expire in December 2021. So we don't know what happens to him next. Kevin Owens, his ends in January 2021. So don't know what happens with him. And at the moment, Montez, Ford Angel, Doc, and Street Profits, they're at least supposed to be signed to a multi-year deal at least through 2021 of this year, December. So we don't know what those stars are going to be out, but one of the people we absolutely know looks like is going to be in a bad spot will probably be Charlotte Flair. And, you know, it sucks to go and see her kind of going through things and making her way out where things are. God, there's so much more I could be talking about. I got Vince Russo talking about the problems with the company handing out scripted promos to superstars. What can I get in here for the next couple of minutes? I only got a couple of minutes left. Let me try to get in. Well, I'll just take this real quick from Russo. He talked about the coronation segment of Queen Zelina Vega, and the whole angle looked unconvincing. And he said this in my Russo voice. I was a producer in the wrestling business for many years. I don't think there was one talent I ever said, here's your script, say this verbatim, don't go off script. Now, let's think about this logically. Let's take Zelina Vega. She's supposed to be a TV superstar. Leading lady. Let me get this correct now. So she's a star, and you're telling her, here's a script, you need to know this verbatim, don't go off the script. That's not a star. That's an extra. That's an extra that got one line in a movie. That's pretty much what I think he would have said. Hell, I could talk about Tony Khan being interviewed by Business Insider. Another piece for him talking about how in just 2 years, AEW has become a wrestling heavyweight. So he's getting the publicity, he's getting the press, which that only could just, infuriate Vince McMahon and the WWE right now as we speak. One last thing. The AEW Impact Wrestling partnership is over. What is it worth it? Martin James Dickinson from the Sportster writes about it. When it began, it seemed like it was going to be a big deal. Now it's finished. Was it a good crossover? So we heard about this back in the end of 2020. Fans were immediately starting writing a list of dream matches between the promotions. And actually, they're saying that this was weak. Now, they did get Kenny Omega winning the Impact World title, which is one of the major factors of what happened here. And then he didn't lose to anybody in the Impact roster. Instead, Kenny Omega ran through the main event stars on the Impact roster and beat them all every week on Impact Plus pay-per-views. The ratings didn't do much better as a result. And then Christian Cage, when there was not much to be said about the Impact Wrestling title being defended on AEW Rampage on the first episode, Christian Cage wins and becomes champion. But then we get what we got this weekend at Bound for Glory, where Christian Cage did drop the belt. Then they moved the storyline along to get Moose becoming the new world champion, which will create some nuclear heat for him on Impact Wrestling this Thursday, which that hopefully will bring some ratings and bring some people to watch the show this week. Hopefully the ratings go well over 100,000 and much more than that. Let's just hope for it. So there wasn't a whole lot of crossovers. And then we had issues that came about there as well. We did get a lot of Tony Khan and a lot of things that were a chance for him to go and promote AEW Dynamite on Impact Wrestling for what it was worth. I didn't mind so much I thought it was kind of funny. And added a little something to things. Then we had the Sammy Guevara incident where February 2021, the Wrestling Observer Newsletter reported that Sammy Guevara was supposed to be a part of a 6-man tag team match teaming with Chris Bay and Ace Austin. That team was supposed to win the match and then face each other in a triple threat for the X Division title. Guevara didn't think the story made sense, as the storyline at the time was leaving the Inner Circle to branch out on his own. Why be part of another team? So Guevara nixed the angle. So he never showed on Impact Television at all. Meltzer sources said that Guevara suggested winning the X Division title and returning to AEW with it, but would be stripped of the title, never losing it. Then the title would be put up for grabs in a tournament. Impact didn't want to do it, or any of his ideas, and the whole thing became their way or the highway situation. But everything was resolved. I mean, everything just phased out, and that was it. And that same Guevara did claim the whole thing was blown out of proportion. Quote, what was presented, I didn't see it working for me. I still wish nothing but the best for Impact and everybody there. Okay. So all we really got was that. Now, I still think there's some things that did benefit, because you also have the New Japan relationship, which I think that benefited both Impact Wrestling and AEW. More for Impact, I think, because I think they did get the advantage of having those stars, on their shows. Finjuice and Hikuleo and Kojima, among others. At least you had some of that working for you, which was nice. So really more New Japan that had that. But the New Japan relationship does not change. And I'm sure that down the line, we're going to see more of AAA talent work with Impact. Because Impact, they do a lot more with the relationships as they want. But also there's also only much that can be done in terms of just taking New Japan talent. AEW wants to work with the Japanese talent and bring them over. And they've only had a couple of stars they've been able to bring over so far. Minoru Suzuki, the latest. But then other than that, and Satoshi Kojima. Well, those stars that have been able to make it over, after all said and done, they have. And Kojima has worked a match in Impact. Minoru Suzuki is going to be wrestling in the set of tapings now, post Bound for Glory. So you have that going for him. Finjuice has continued to work there. Good Brothers have worked on both shows. More on Impact than they have on AEW. So you got that going for you, which is all good. That's wonderful to see. And with that said, now we're at the point where Impact Wrestling has brought in a lot of talent. They obviously have some directions where they were going with Josh Alexander, with Moose, with W. Morrissey, with Ace Austin. There's no question they unquestionably have a great roster of talent. They brought in more stars. We could probably still see Braun Strowman now come in as Titan or Adam Scherr. Bray Wyatt could very well come in. I know some people don't want to think that. They think he's going to be AEW bound, Bray Wyatt, but I still think there's some room for him to be here. Impact Wrestling just does better. They already have Darby Allin that kind of fits in that inner realm. They have Abaddon. But really, when you want to talk about the inner realm, the real supernatural or fictional characters, more or less, that's Impact Wrestling's ground. They have Decay, okay? They got James Mitchell. They've worked with that part, and Sue Young and Kimberly. They have that whole thing going for them that has really been their wheel well. So for Bray Wyatt to be part of that and a lot of creativity he could be doing there, he would really hope bring a lot to that brand, to my thing anyway. So they have that. Like I said, there's a lot of stars. They brought in Inspiration, the former Iconics, and they have all those other WWE stars they need to work off of, that they got to build from, that were brought on board after all the releases. And so the relationship was there. I don't see how there couldn't be somewhere down the line where they could work with each other again. Maybe on some kind of a co-branded show. Something like that could happen. But Impact Wrestling, I don't think, probably an amicable split. Because they're both kind of working on their own things. Impact Wrestling has a whole lot of to work with right now with what they have. So for them right now to go and work with other talent in AEW, they probably don't have the time for it. And they've done what they wanted to do to help elevate the title, because they had the title held by two significant champions in Kenny Omega and Christian Cage. Now a title means quite a bit for someone like Moose to have it after all this time. It was just the way he got to it. Because remember, we did see Moose at Slammiversary go after Kenny Omega in a legitimate run at the belt and lose. on AEW's grounds in Daly's place in Jacksonville, all the way to Bound for Glory, and he sneaks his way in to win. I mean, there's a story to be told there. And a lot of people that Moose screwed over as a result. Josh Alexander for 1, W. Morrissey for 2, among others. And then plus the existing feuds he has with the likes of Eddie Edwards and others out there. There's a whole lot that can be said about that. So, there we go. I got it all in. It was a lot right there. Make sure to go and check out the website, WrestlingIsReal.com. All the shows are going to be right there. Easy way to go and find all the links. I got wrestling headlines down there as well. You can also look for. I'm very happy with how the website looks. I've continued to do a little bit of tweaking to it, but it's pretty simple and cutthroat. You get to see the most recent episodes. You can get the access to all the archives and find it. Also find a way to go ahead and share all the shows and find all the different places where you can go ahead and subscribe to the show itself. I got one direct for Apple Podcasts. You can also look for all the other links that are out there and more. We're going to leave it there. Only a couple weeks out from Full Gear, and that's shaping up to be something really good. Let's just go in really quickly, talk about what they have so far scheduled for Full Gear coming up November 13th. Let's bring up what they already have so far scheduled and put in place. At the moment, Kenny Omega versus Hangman Page, AEW World Title. The finals of the World Title Eliminator Tournament. AEW Women's Championship will be Dr. Britt Baker DMD versus Ty Conti. Inner Circle versus America Top Team in a 5-on-5 match. So Ethan Page, Scorpio Sky, Men of the Year, and 3 members of America Top Team against Jericho, Hager, Guevara, Santana, Ortiz. AEW World Tag Team titles, Lucha Brothers versus STR, and MJF now announced versus Darby Allin. Damn, that's a good show. Damn, what a good show coming up. And there you go. We'll leave it all there. Come back next week for another Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us. Thank you for listening to the Wrestling is Real podcast. You can find all previous episodes at WrestlingIsReal.com or subscribe to the show on all major podcast outlets, including Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Follow the King of Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at King of Podcasts, and search King of Podcasts on YouTube, or type youtube.com/JBRASCO951. This has been a presentation of the King of Podcasts Radio Network.